As a part of our May series, we're looking at the frequency shift. More specifically, moving from reaction to response. Part 2, tuning differently. Last week we talked about resonance over resistance. How life changes not through force, but through attunement. How the ocean does not fight the tide. Trees do not strain to grow. The Tao does not force the river. Life moves through rhythm. The Celtic mystics believed that the soul forgets itself when it loses rhythm with creation. The tide still moves, the moon still rises, the seasons still turn, and somewhere beneath the noise, your nervous system is still trying to remember the ancient rhythm of peace. And we explored something important. Whatever you resist internally often gains more control externally, because resistance creates friction. It tightens the body, speeds the mind. It contracts the nervous system for sure, but resonance teaches us how to stay connected to ourselves even while life is moving. Not collapsing, not controlling, not even fighting reality every 5 minutes before noon. And some of us are exhausted not because life is happening, but because internally we're arguing with almost every moment of life. Traffic, politics, your ex, your inbox, your mother, Mercury retrograde, the self-checkout machine at the grocery store. At some point, the nervous system says, man, can we just stop fighting literally everything? Because resonance is not passivity, it's alignment. It's learning how to meet life wherever it is happening and without immediately going to war with it. Thomas Merton once wrote that many people spend their lives climbing ladders only to discover the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. And honestly, some of us have spent years spiritually sprinting toward exhaustion while our soul has been quietly standing beside a river saying, you can stop running now. And today we take that one layer deeper. Because if humanity is going to understand the universe, we're going to have to understand frequency. Not just intellectually, though, experientially. Because everything is vibrating, everything is moving, everything is communicating. And in fact, everything is transmitting. Did you know that light is frequency? Sound is frequency? Thought is frequency? Even your emotions are frequency. Your nervous system is frequency. Even modern physics tells us that what appears solid is actually vibrating energy organized into form. So maybe the ancients were onto something when they said, as within, so without. Because the universe is not just made of objects. It's made of patterns, rhythms, resonance. And here's where it gets really fascinating, at least to me. Physics now shows us that systems naturally synchronize with dominant frequencies around them. Pendulums eventually swing together. Yeah, metronomes eventually align. Heart rhythms synchronize. Brains synchronize. Even human nervous systems begin to mirror each other. Which means your internal state is never just personal. It's actually participatory. You are affecting the field around you all the time. That's why anxiety spreads. But peace spreads too. Fear, yeah, it's contagious, but coherence is also contagious. You know, one regulated person can literally begin stabilizing the emotional environment around them. Not because they're controlling others, but because frequency influences frequency. John O'Donohue often spoke about the power of a calm and rooted presence, how one peaceful soul can become shelter for others in the middle of a storm. And haven't you experienced that before? One grounded person walks into the room and suddenly everybody breathes a little deeper. That's why fear can spread through a room faster than facts. And it's why one calm person can suddenly make everyone breathe deeper. Human beings are basically tuning forks with a car payment. And most people are unconsciously vibrating at the frequency of whatever they consume all day long through their senses. News, social media outrage, political chaos, all of the fear cycles, that doom scrolling till 2 o'clock in the morning while eating shredded cheese over the sink. And then we wonder, though, why our nervous system feels like it's hosting a civil war. Because frequency entrains frequency. Quantum physics calls it resonance. Neuroscience calls it co-regulation. Mystics call it consciousness. Different language, yes, but same reality. And most people are trying to change their lives without ever learning what frequency they're living in. They keep trying to fix the fruit while ignoring the root. So goes the root, so comes forth the fruit. I think I said that right. We keep trying to fix the fruit while we're ignoring the root signal underneath it. As the root goes, so the fruit shows. Is that better? That's why this matters, though. Because your life does not only move according to your intentions, it also moves according to your regulation. Your body is always broadcasting, and the nervous system is constantly asking one ancient question: am I safe? And when the answer feels like no, the system reacts. It's built to. The breathing changes, the muscles tighten, maybe the jaw locks, thoughts start to speed up and become erratic. The body essentially prepares for war. And then we usually make it worse, not on purpose, but it happens because we resist the reaction itself. Man, I shouldn't be feeling this way. What's wrong with me? I need to get over this. I need to control this. And now we have pain plus resistance to the pain. And that's like being caught in a rainstorm and punching the weather. And as an old Irish blessing might remind us, you cannot bully the wind to becoming still, but you can learn how to walk through it differently. And some of us have spent years spiritually shadowboxing reality, trying to outpray the anxiety. Going to a conference and learning how to outthink fear. Maybe out-hustle exhaustion. Meanwhile, the nervous system is over there waving a white flag saying, could we maybe sit down for a minute and just chill out? So there's a few things I want to look at today. Number one, you're not your reaction. You are not your reaction. One of the deepest awakenings I think a human being can have is realizing you are not the first reaction. Your reaction is often conditioning. Your response is consciousness. Your reaction may come from survival modes. Your response, though, can come from presence. And those are absolutely not the same thing. You can feel anger without becoming violence. You can feel fear without becoming panic. You can feel grief without losing yourself inside of it. That actually changes everything about your life. That's why it's a powerful revelation. Because most people think maturity means never feeling difficult emotions. No. Maturity means learning how to stay present while emotion moves through the body without letting it become your identity. Whoa. Sit there a moment. Maturity means learning how to stay present while emotion moves through the body without letting it become your identity. The ocean can have waves without forgetting it's still the ocean. But a lot of spiritual people have accidentally turned healing into an emotional perfectionism exercise, trying to become so high vibration they never feel sadness, frustration, anger, or fear. And that's not awakening. That's suppression and repression wearing beads and linen pants, trying to look spiritual. You know, Pelagius once said, actually he was one of the early Celtic Christian voices, and he believed that there was something deeply sacred, In fact, he said it's something deeply sacred and fundamentally good within the human soul. And he was speaking to something that's not broken beyond repair, not abandoned by the divine, but carrying an original beauty that can become buried underneath fear and conditioning. And I think that matters because many people have spent their entire lives believing their deepest nature is fallen. In fact, a lot of us have been taught that. And so essentially we believe that our deepest nature is failure. But what if beneath the survival patterns, beneath the anxiety, and beneath all of those reactions, there is still goodness, just trying to breathe? Number 2, the universe responds to frequency. Dr. David R. Hawkins talked about emotional states of energetic frequencies. He essentially taught that shame collapses energies, fear contracts it, anger burns outward, desire chases, pride inflates, but eventually something begins to stabilize. And then there's an opening through what he called courage. And that opening goes into acceptance, and then into love, joy, and peace. And here's the important part. You do not have to force your way into quote-unquote higher states of being. You actually surrender or release your way into them. That's why reaction exhausts people. Reaction is survival trying to stay in control, while response is presence learning to trust itself. And once you begin understanding frequency, you stop asking, how do I win this moment? And you start asking, what am I transmitting into this moment? Because reactive energy creates reactive worlds, but coherent people create coherent environments. One regulated system can calm an entire room, as I mentioned earlier. One grounded person can interrupt generational chaos. One conscious pause can stop decades of unconscious patterns from continuing. And that's true power. That's real power. Not domination, but regulation. Not controlling others, but becoming so internally coherent that your presence itself becomes medicine. Because people can feel when someone is performing calm and when someone has actually become anchored in the calm. Number 3, the sacred pause. Viktor Frankl wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose." Let's hear that one more time. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. Now listen, that space may be one of the holiest places in human experience. Seriously. The Celtic monks often spoke of it as the listening heart. I love that. A heart quiet enough to hear the sacred in the waves, to hear the presence and the sacred in the wind, in silence, and even in the ache of being human. Not because suffering is holy, no, but because awareness can transform suffering into wisdom. Because unconscious reaction repeats the past, but conscious response creates the possibilities. Something happens, someone disappoints you, a text comes through, an argument begins. A memory gets triggered and immediately the body wants to react. Becomes defensive, goes on attack mode, maybe withdraws, experiences the feeling of needing to control, maybe just collapses altogether. But what if instead of immediately reacting, you paused long enough to tune differently? Not to suppress and not to pretend, not to bypass, just breathing long enough to remember, I do not have to become this moment. Think on that. Where does that land? I do not have to become this moment. I'm in this moment but I don't have to become this moment. That changes the entire frequency. Because when awareness enters the nervous system, space appears. And where there is space, listen, there is choice. And where there is choice, there is freedom. Neuroscience now confirms something that mystics have really taught for centuries, and that is that awareness changes the system being observed. The moment you become conscious of the reaction, you are already no longer completely trapped inside of it. You see, observation itself creates space. That's huge. Because most people think freedom means controlling emotion. No. Freedom means becoming aware enough to stop unconsciously obeying every emotional impulse that passes through the body. You don't have to believe every thought. You don't have to act on every feeling. You don't have to become every nervous system storm that blows through your life. You can be the witness, the observer. You can breathe with it, stay present with it, and choose differently. That's evolution. Not suppressing your humanity. Learning how to hold it lovingly and consciously. Number 4. I call this practical resonance. So here's the practice. When tension rises, instead of asking, how do I control this? Ask, what frequency am I tuning to right now? Is it fear, urgency, scarcity, shame, pressure, defensiveness? And then gently shift. Not through force, through awareness, through breath, through presence. It may sound like this. I feel anxious, and I'm still here. I feel uncertainty, and I'm still grounded. I feel pressure, and I refuse to abandon myself. Or maybe this. I can slow down before I speak. I can breathe before I become. You see, that's frequency work. It may not be crystals or pretending that Mercury ruined your Tuesday. Although honestly, some of us do get a little weird during Mercury retrograde. A lot weird, some of us. But real frequency work is learning how to remain present enough that survival no longer runs our entire life. See, that's it. That's the sweet spot. Now, in closing, loved ones, the universe is not merely responding to words. It's responding to coherence, to alignment, to resonance, to embodied frequency. Maybe enlightenment is not escaping the human experience. Maybe it's becoming coherent enough that your nervous system no longer mistakes every moment for an emergency. Maybe awakening is simply this. No longer vibrating at the frequency of survival. Especially when your soul is trying to teach you resonance. Because once you begin understanding frequency, you stop living in it as a reaction to life. And you begin living as a response to it. More aware, more rooted, more intentional, more alive, more like an old tree beside the sea, bent perhaps by the storms, but no longer afraid of the wind. And maybe that's the real frequency shift. Not becoming someone else, but becoming so present, so regulated and so aligned that your life finally begins reflecting the deep truth underneath all of the noise and the chaos. So I leave you with this blessing today. May you trust your breath again. May your nervous system remember it was never designed to live at war with life. May peace return to your body in quiet and ordinary ways, like rain softening dry ground, like morning light touching the sea, like firelight warming an old stone room. May you become rooted enough that urgency no longer controls you, gentle enough that love still reaches you, present enough to hear the deeper rhythm underneath all the noise. And may you remember, calm is not weakness. Peace is not passivity. Presence is power, tuned correctly. And so it is.